Our webinar today, 3 content pillars every organization needs to be future ready. Tools and strategies every enterprise needs today to be successful in digital transformation. My name is Stefan Gens, and I'm the Senior Worldwide Evangelist for Technical Communication at Adobe. And I'm mainly taking care of Adobe RoboHelp, Adobe FrameMaker, and of course our DITA CCMS AEM guides, or Adobe Experience Manager guides, which is just rebranded from XML documentation for Adobe Experience Manager to AM Guides. So let's have a look at the agenda, what we have today. I will first do a little bit of walkthrough the enterprise content landscape, and we will look at what content strategy is and why it's important to cover the whole enterprise, and not just, for example, marketing. We will look at structured content, what that is, how that looks like, with some examples, and how that enables personalization and automation and omnichannel. And we will have a look at what a CCMS is as a key component in digital transformation and in Industry 4.0. So let's first look at the enterprise content landscape and walk through that. So content is basically everywhere in the company. And of course, the most prominent content in a company is usually marketing, because it's highly visible inside and outside, and a lot of people get into contact with the content that the marketing teams are producing. But content is not just limited to marketing. It's, of course, and many of you in the audience are from the technical documentation field, it's also there in the technical documentation departments. A lot of content is produced there. In terms of words, maybe even more than in marketing, if you think of all these large-scale documentation portals and the user guides and administration guides and maintenance guides and whatever. So a lot of content is produced in the documentation departments. And the training departments, learning and training enablement, they produce a lot of content as well. And, of course, the support teams usually also have a lot of content and produce a lot of content, for example, for their knowledge bases and their KBs and other information resources that they might use to assist customers when customers have a challenge and problem. And of course, the financial department also produces a lot of content. And I'm not exactly talking about, let's say, invoices and things like that, but I'm thinking of reports, financial reports that companies have to produce, and which are often produced in Word and Excel, and then brought into InDesign somehow, and from there they get edited and layouted and beautified, and then the marketing team is usually doing that, and then they get published. Maybe on the corporate website again, but often not even in HTML format, but just as a downloadable PDF. So not the best omnichannel experience that you can do. And of course, the legal departments are also producing a lot of content. For example, contracts, or think of end-user license agreements. Think of content that is required for technical documentation, for example, in terms of special safety and cautions and notices that might have a legal impact on the company if the content is not right. And of course, product information management. It's a big topic in companies, and a lot of content is produced there as well. Often it's more like micro content, small information snippets that are attached to a certain product or certain part of a product. And of course, we have, and that's often overlooked piece, the QMS, the quality management system, where policy and procedures are documented, where the quality management standards are documented of a company. And finally, we have research and development, and they often also produce a lot of content to document things, to write papers that they might need to file in for patents or into scientific papers and so on. So There are many content silos in companies, and a lot of content is produced in these silos. So let's take one single information piece and think of that. We have maybe one paragraph or one certain information, and who's actually using that? Of course, the marketing is using that and might put it on the website, or they might put it on a flyer or a brochure or a catalog or whatever. And this single piece of information is used in multiple channels even today, but it's not automated, and usually it's copy and paste. This information snippet is sent around by email, and then the one graphic designer, the web designer, is integrating it into the website, and the graphic designer in front of InDesign is copy and pasting it into InDesign or a catalog or a brochure, or maybe there's a PIM system that is connected with the catalog system. So it's copy and pasted there, and I don't even talk about translating here, but that single piece of information is duplicated many times, even just only in marketing. And of course, the technical documentation is using that as well. They might integrate that into a user manual, for example. And of course, then we have the training department. The training department might use that same content snippet again. Maybe they rephrase it a little bit and put it into a learning system, or put it into a training, maybe Adobe Captivate or whatever, into some training tool to have that as content available for people who watch this training later. And of course, the legal department might even use that piece of content as well. Maybe they need to review it, maybe they need to store it somewhere for having it saved for later if something goes wrong and they get some complaints or so, or legal issues. And of course, it might also go into the PIM system as a product information piece. And finally, the support team will also use that same single information snippet again in their knowledge base maybe. So all these departments and all these systems are using one and the same information, but that information is produced somewhere and then it's floating around through into all kinds of systems, often by email, by manual copy and paste, and then it's somewhere. And that is, of course, not the way we want to work today, because it's dangerous. We can lose that information. The information might change over time by different people's changing it, and it's not a single source of truth. So again, it's not a single source of truth. Single source of truth basically means you have that one information available at one place. So most companies are still a long way away from achieving this single source of truth. So let's talk about why that is and how we can fix that maybe. Because we need to talk about content strategy here. But content strategy, please, for all, for the whole enterprise, not just a content strategy for marketing. We need a content strategy that is available everywhere in the company and applied to all departments. Content strategy, content what? Let's have a look what content strategy means. Content strategy encompasses the planning, development, the management, the delivery, and the analysis of content. Content strategy is an area of user experience design, and it relates to many related disciplines such as information architecture, content management, business analysis, digital marketing, technical communication. So there are a lot of disciplines that have an impact on content strategy or that content strategy is impacting. So when you do content strategy, your information architecture will depend on your content strategy, or you build the information architecture based on the content strategy that you have. If you want to manage your content, then you have a certain information architecture at the bottom, and the content strategy is part, content management is then becoming part of the overall content strategy. All clear? Well, I know it's maybe a little bit confusing and complicated if we think about all these many pieces that we have to bring together and to connect the dots. And sometimes it reminds me of that strategy, football strategy thing here, where you have a lot of individual players and they all run into different directions and have different ideas of the strategy, how to win the game. So it's sometimes a little bit complicated, and I found that picture visualizes that in a somewhat nice way. We want to get from A to B, or from B to A, and there are many ways how you could do it, and many players have their own ideas. And if you look at certain football clubs with very big football stars, sometimes they're not the best team players, but more like individual heroes. So basically, content strategy, to reduce that long paragraphs 2 slides ago, it's basically about planning how your content will be used and how it will be produced, then developing that content, and then, of course, managing that content. So once that is done, and management, for example, also includes things like translation management, we have to provision that content. And I explicitly chose the word provision and not publishing, because publishing is sort of a unidirectional thing, and it's more, when we think of publishing, we think of creating a PDF or making a printout, or publishing a website, or publishing some online help, etc. But content today, and that's why I chose that word provision, is much more than publishing content. It's about making content available, and making it available means that content should not only be accessible on a website or a PDF, it might also need to be accessible for a system. So the content consumer today is not only a human being, it can also be a machine or some system who wants to access that content through an API. Or the system should deliver that content and push that content into some other system, into some other machine, or some other content management system, or knowledge base portal, or whatever. So content needs to flow, and my friend Markus Wiedenmeier nicely put it, content needs to flow like water. And we will have that a little bit later as well. So it's really quite simple, isn't it? And if you look at that picture, it reminds me a little bit of that PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act, from the quality management system, ISO 9001. And that is why I also put that circle, have put that circle there, because it's you're planning, you're developing the content, managing the content, provisioning the content, analyzing the content, and then need to go into planning again. So it's a never-ending story where you always want to cycle through that life cycle of that content strategy and make it better and improve it and get better over time. So that idea, I try to bring that idea of the PDCA cycle a little bit into that content strategy picture here. So it's really quite simple, isn't it? Well, the problem is marketing has a content strategy, and the sales department has a sales strategy, and the technical documentation has also very often a content strategy. Not always, not every company, and very often technical documentation departments are even at the forefront of content strategy development. And the product information managers structure product information in their PIM system. And the support has a ticket system. And those with a learning management system, they have a training calendar, which is also some form of content strategy. And the quality managers only need the 9001 for the quality management documentation, they think. But they need to think further, and they need to think beyond just creating that process documentation manual. They need to think about who wants to access that content, who needs to access that content, how can I get that procedure and policies documentation and my quality and process documentation, how can I bring that to my content consumers? And I don't want to have that just locked away as a printout in my cupboard until the QM auditor comes and wants to review it once in a year. No, we want to have that available for the whole company so that the whole company starts to live the quality management. And that means you need to think about a content strategy for your quality management documentation as well and all related documents. And of course, legal needs a content strategy as well, because they need to control the content. They need to audit the content. They need to revision the content. They need to have the ability to make content audits and look into the history of content, how it was changed, who created that content, who changed that content, who approved that change from the legal department, and so on. So they need that content history as well. So they need to have that content strategy in place as well. And also in terms of where is that legal content flowing to. If it's becoming part of a technical documentation as, for example, an end-user license agreement, or as some legal content in a technical documentation, then we need to think about how to connect these things, how to connect the legal department with the technical documentation department, or maybe even the marketing department, so that all comes together. And for that, we really need to centralize the content and have a single source of truth and not that floating around content. It needs to flow like water, but in a different meaning. So there are just too many strategies from too many departments that are not aligned with each other very often, and we need to align them. And there are just too many tools, and that's the next big problem an enterprise has. And I see that in so many even bigger enterprises, and the bigger the enterprises become, the even more dramatic becomes that problem. So let's have a look at that. So marketing, they have a web CMS from vendor A. That's the best web CMS available, of course. And sales has a CRM from vendor B. And the technical documentation department has a technical documentation CMS from vendor C. And the product manager has a PIM system from vendor D. And support has a specialized knowledge base from vendor E. And of course, there's a learning management system from vendor F too. And the quality managers have a quality management system tool from vendor G. And the legal department does everything with Word. So there are a lot of tools that are in place in an enterprise. And usually they're not connected with each other. They're from different vendors. And when I talk to IT managers, they really hate it because they have to maintain so many systems, and every system needs to they need to pay for every system, they need to maintain every system, they need to update every system, they need to support the users of every system. So they basically need to know a lot of systems, how to help their internal users with it, maintain them, take care of licensing, make sure that the right users are using the right system with the right license, and so on. And it's all cluttered. And if then a requirement comes and from one department where they say, oh, we have our content in system A, like our product information management system, which is a really cool system. But we also need that product information now on the website for our online shop. And then they're like, yeah, it does work, because we had that great content strategy maybe even developed where we said, oh, we want to have the content from system A in system B. But yeah, there's no API for that. Bad. Or no one has written a connector in the past. There's no connector available. So we have to develop one or buy that in as a service from someone. And that can easily become a huge challenge. And in the end, you are stuck with a cluttered landscape of a lot of island solutions where you have paid a lot of money to connect them, and then the connectors break because vendor B has suddenly updated the API or changed something, or maybe closed the API because only one customer was using it, whatever. There are myriad problems that can come up where you are stuck with that cluttered landscape of many, many vendors and many, many tools. Not to mention that one vendor might even go away from the market and you have to migrate to some other content solution. So there is a large cluttered landscape that really makes it challenging. So each department has its own content strategy. Each department has its own content repository. I don't want to call it content management here, I'll just say content repository because it sounds a little bit more neutral to me. And each department sits in its own silo, in its own content silo, and that is a big challenge. Let me look at what we should do instead. And there was a great study from Forrester, the Forrester Consulting Thought Leadership document, CCMS Systems, Optimizing Long-Form Content for Personalized and Consistent Experiences from August 2021. And there they had this quote, or this text, which I want to quote here, which I found remarkably interesting and on the point. Let me quote it. Instead, smart organizations need to chart a course for the future with content reuse and omni-channel delivery as landmarks. Imagine that in a Forrester study. This means that organizational structures and processes must be aligned to deliver omni-channel content. And technology needs to be networked and integrated and not working in silos within the organization. Basically what I just said. And this is, if you think about that, Forrester interviewed 450 C-suite executives in this study, and they came to these recommendations. Yeah, so you see that a lot of companies in the world, from wherever they might be, from whichever country they might be, they are all struggling with these things. And one important factor here is, let me try to pull out the main things here from that quote. It's very important that you have reusable content and that you actually do reuse content. It's very important for the success of the company in the future that you have omni-channel delivery, that you have the capability to deliver content in many ways, and that you can align your organizational structures and processes to deliver omni-channel content. So think of that from a management perspective. It's not, they don't say, we want to deliver, we need to align the omnichannel content delivery experiences to our organizational structures. They put it vice versa. You need to align your business processes and your organizational structures to be able to deliver omnichannel content, because that is much more important than maybe a decades-old business process. So rethink, re-innovate, and become more agile and become more flexible, and be willing to go into that change for the future, to change also your organizational structures and processes to be able to deliver omnichannel content. And technology must be networked and integrated. That means one system with a lot of components for all these different tasks that you need to solve. And it needs all to be integrated. It does not always have to be one big system, but a platform that is open with APIs where maybe other things can dock in and contribute. But it's important that these systems can actually talk with each other. And of course, it's more easy if you have one big platform where all the things are already there and you don't need to think about buying in or renting, licensing connectors or developing them. A more integrated solution, like for example, Adobe Experience Manager platform, that is of course a much better investment than buying 10, 20 different systems and then trying to connect them and try to solve the problems that they create. So no more silos is basically the idea here. And successful companies of the future, they have understood that corporate content and thus the company's knowledge represents the company's greatest value. And let that sink. I'm highly convinced of that, because I think that there's so much content in the company. So many things are documented. How the company has to run in the quality management system, how the processes are in the quality management system, how the products work, how they can be used, how they can be repaired, how they can be sold, and so on. There's so much content that actually makes the company work, that enables the company to work. And the better the things are documented, old thing, the more easy it is to keep the company running, even in times of disasters, when the company burns down or when an employee dies or whatever. If things are well documented, it's usually a much more stable company, because the content is there. And the content, if the content is containing all the knowledge of your company, and that knowledge is documented, for example, in the technical documentation, in the quality management system, in the marketing content, and legal content, of course. All that content represents the real value of the company. And this is what companies need to understand. And not every company, I think, has really understood that to its full extent, how valuable the content that they have in their company is for the success of their company, how crucial that content is for the success of their company. So handling of content must be organized centrally. It must become a central process in the company. It must become a central asset in the company. And it needs to be cross departments in the company. So it needs to be organized centrally and across departments in the company. A cross-enterprise, unified, and shared content strategy must be aligned with a single source of truth principle and provide omni-channel delivery. Woo, good. So let's look at structured content. We talked about content strategy. Now let's talk about structured content for personalization, automation, and omni-channel. Structured content is information or content that is organized in a rule-based and predictable manner and is classified and enriched with metadata. Structured content is usually XML-based. So Word, Markdown, HTML, and many other formats are not structured information. Even if Word is docx, is a zip container with XML inside and Markdown has some markup, and HTML is even a tagged language, but they're all not structured formats. They don't provide information in a structured way and not in an enriched, intelligent way. Let me show you an example here. That is not structured content. That is maybe typewriter. That is Markdown. It's very easy to write. A lot of developers like it, and it's okay as some drafting content stage, in a stage of content drafting. And of course, then it needs to go to a professional technical writer, for example, and they usually work with DITA and XML and enrich their content with metadata and attribution for personalization, etc. That is very simple plain text, basically, and you add two asterisks to make a word bold and make a hashtag for heading 1 and 2 hashtags for heading 2, but that is not really structured content. That is structured content. What you see here is a topic from DITA with a title, a prologue with metadata, and a body with a content. The topic has a unique ID. It's marked up as English US, and the prologue has some metadata like author, step against, when the document was created, when it was last modified, and in the section itself there are a couple of paragraphs and a title, and it will show you in the next slide, on the next slide, where the potential of that is and why it's important to do it like that, and how much value you can create by such a simple thing. But what does that example make intelligent content? Because it meets basically all the requirements. It's structured content, it's DITA, it's rule-based, based on a DTD or a schema, and it's XML. So in the DTD, in the rules, there's defined, okay, a topic always has to start with the title, then we need to add the metadata, then in the body we can add a section, then we need to add the title, then we can add the paragraphs. So there's a clear structure and a clear rule how the content has to be created. Of course, that's all customizable for the company. They can customize that. You can constrain DITA, you can specialize DITA, etc. But even if you do that, it's still following, the authors will always follow certain rules that you as a company define in your content strategy. There we have it again. It has metadata. It's a single source of truth. I will show that in the next slide why I think so. And it enables omni-channel deployment and enables automation and enables personalization. How does it doing that? Let's have a look. So that topic is unique with that unique ID. It has that metadata. And in that section is a single source of truth. Why? Because we can create multiple outputs from that and filter the content based on the attributes that you see there. So I can personalize that content for my customers. There's a platform attribute like Windows and Mac. And there's an audience attribute like novice and expert. So later on, when I want to use that content, I can publish it to a website, for example, or create multiple PDFs out of it, or can give it access to it through the API, so that some other system can pull out only the content that is relevant for example, a novice or an expert user, or an expert user that is on Mac and not on Windows. And with this attribution, and that's just an example here, I can add a lot more, and I can create my specialized attributes. You can create really personalized experiences for every audience that you have. And you can deliver it to multiple platforms, and you can deliver it to multiple systems, and create multiple outputs, or merge everything into one output and let the user filter what they want to see. Or think of more advanced scenarios where you have a support portal or a documentation portal, and that's not so uncommon. I just had that example with a German manufacturer here, where the customer logs into the support portal with the documentation, and the system knows which machine has the customer bought in which configuration. And therefore, the documentation is customized for this customer and the specific configuration of that machine. And that is connected because it's connected with the profile of that customer in the system. And the system knows, okay, the customer has bought machine A in configuration B with these extra tool set. And the content created in DITA, attributed, is stored in the system, published, and then the system just pulls out the paragraphs in this example here that are for this user on a Windows machine with expert level, and or maybe on a Mac. And then you can show the customized, personalized content for this specific customer. Of course, this is a relatively simple example. I try to keep it a little bit simple here to explain the concept, but you can drive that to really heights and personalize that content on a lot of levels. So the value to a company is that the information is unique and it can be made available to all. It's a single source of truth. The metadata and attributes make the information richer. You can do much more with these text strings that are between these tags. And the information can be provided for all channels. It's an omni-channel experience that you can create there, because it can be delivered or offered through an API. It can be published to a website. It can be published as a PDF. It can be published to a Kindle or whatever, or even other more advanced scenarios that I will talk about later. So you have a faster time to market through automation, because you can highly automate the processes that are doing something with the content. You can use XSLT, you can use the API. And you have a higher customer satisfaction through personalization or more relevant content. And higher customer satisfaction basically means higher revenue, because your sales will grow if the customers are happy and if they get the information they need in the context they are in the situation they are in, when they get exactly the content that they need and look for. That is the part. That was the part about structured content. Now let's have a look at the CCMS, a key component in the digital transformation and Industry 4.0 in IoT. A component content management system, or short CCMS, is a content management system that manages content at a granular level, a component, rather than at the document level. So things like SharePoint, or systems tools like SharePoint, they are not content management systems. They are maybe document management systems or document repositories. And a content management system usually manages a document, and a component content management system manages small granular content chunks, small content snippets, small content pieces. That can be sometimes, if you want, even just one word, or maybe just one small paragraph that is a collection of paragraphs in the end. And then this collection of someone is compiling a document out of these individual components, of these content references. So you create some sort of container document, so to say, and then pull in multiple information pieces. And you do this multiple times through multiple topics or tasks or concepts, and then collect them in a data map, for example. And then you can publish that or offer that for content consumption, to be more generic here. And each component represents a single topic, a concept, or it could also be an asset, like an AEM assets, where you can also manage your images, your videos, audio files, etc., or your marketing visuals, as well as your technical drawings, if you want. It could be a table, it could be a product description, a short one, or a process. So a lot of things can be managed in a component content management system. Let me come back to that Forrester study. They wrote, and also that's also a remarkable quote, when content is unstructured, it leads to duplicate content and redundancy. Structure and single sourcing via a CCMS makes content fluid. There we are again, Marcus. Content needs to flow like water. And it needs to be easy to change. And the CCMS enables you to do that. That's also from that Forrester study. If you want to get that study, you can write me an email, and I will be happy to send it to you. And organizations are turning to CCMS systems, Forrester writes, to move faster, increase employee productivity, preserve tight budgets, and deliver content services quickly. Remarkable quote. So, a quicker look at the Adobe solution while we are coming to the end. Let me introduce you to Adobe Experience Manager Guides. Again, formerly it was known as XML documentation for Adobe Experience Manager, because we're XML documenting our own software with it. Adobe Experience Manager Guides, that's the new name, or in short, AEM Guides. It's the DITA CCMS from Adobe. And AEM Guides is part of the Adobe Experience Platform and Adobe Experience Manager. It sits on top of AEM Assets, the market-leading digital asset management system. So every content there is an asset. And there are a lot of other solutions on that platform, like AEM Sites for your website. There's Adobe Analytics to do deep analysis and analytics of your content. We have a great presentation next week at Adobe DITA World from my valued colleague Tulika Garg, who is showing how you can use Adobe Analytics to analyze the performance and how your content is consumed that you have produced in AEM Guides as a technical documentation, for example, as a technical documentation portal. And there are a lot of other solutions from Adobe, like Magento for shop systems, Adobe Campaign for running campaigns, and so on. So they're all sitting on that platform. They're all connected with each other. You can all use them by whatever your configuration needs might be and what you want to achieve in your content strategy. But basically, you can do, I would say, pretty much everything that you can do with content with that platform. And AM Guides is the specialized solution for long-form content, but with micro content. You produce micro content, you produce small chunks, small topics, small concepts, etc., and then compile them into long-form content. That could be long-form marketing content, that could be a legal document, that could be a catalog even. So there's a lot of, or technical documentation, of course. There's a lot of content that you can produce with the system. It offers web-based content creation with an easy-to-use visual web editor. You can create detailed content that is suitable for all devices, wherever you want to publish your content to. You can migrate content from Word, XHTML, IDML, InDesign Exchange format, Markdown, and many other formats to DITA-XML with an out-of-the-box framework, the content ingestion framework that we have there. You can manage structured content. It's a first-class content management system, enables content reuse. You have full version management built in. You have a full reference management. That means you have some sort of a spider web of content where you can see which content is referred by which other content, and you can see incoming references and outgoing references. So you never run into the danger of accidentally deleting some content, which is then used by some other content and then it breaks. So that can be avoided. There's search and tag management, there's online review, multiple people can review content together. There's translation management, so you always see which content is in which language available and can trigger translations if it's not available. And you have extensive reporting possibilities that makes it very interesting for management as well. And you can create AI-supported documentation. So with Adobe Sensei, our AI engine that we have, and that is deployed in more and more tools within Adobe, starting with Adobe Photoshop, in Acrobat you see that for text recognition and so on. And we have also are building that in here also in AM Guides, where you can use Adobe Sensei and machine learning to create intelligent content that delivers very quickly and is easy to find and more easy to create and faster to create, like with automatic tagging. Web-based testing and collaborations, you can review, create review and approval workflows, all web-based of course. Allow multiple authors and reviewers to work in parallel on one document and one review, even if they're in different locations, because it's all web-based. And with projects, you can assign roles and track progress through administrator dashboards. So you have that full cloud-based, web-based collaboration platform. You can deliver content to pretty much every channel because it's all XML at the core, and there are all these publishing frameworks available. You can deliver to AM sites, of course. You can create mobile apps, publish mobile apps for Android and iOS. You can publish to knowledge bases like Salesforce Lightning or CRM platforms, to IoT apps, chatbots, PDFs, HTML5, EPUB, Kindle, and so much more. You can basically publish to every kind of content output delivery channel that you can imagine. And if there's one that is missing out of the box, it's easy to create a transformation for that. And of course, they are strong, and this is where the Industry 4.0 context comes in for me. You have powerful APIs and can deliver content as a service. And content can be made available to basically any industry application that also has an API and can connect. So think of Industry 4.0 applications that can access the DITA-XML content in AM and, for example, retrieve maintenance information. There's this great example that HOMAG, German machinery company, showed at DITA World, last DITA World or second to last DITA World, where they produce the technical documentation in DITA. and then push that into SAP, and the machines, the big machines somewhere in some company, pull their information when the next maintenance cycle is due from the technical information, which is then stored in SAP, so that the story of DITA and Adobe and SAP really comes together there. Or there was this great example of an augmented reality application where a task with multiple steps is hosted in AEM as a DITA file, and then the solution was pulling out the steps from the task list in the DITA task one by one and projecting it into Microsoft HoloLens. So the engineer stands in front of the machine. The part that he needs to work or she needs to work on is highlighted in the glasses, and with a hand gesture, the engineer can swipe through the individual steps they need to work on, and that makes it so cool to work as an engineer and repair a tool. I would really like to do that myself even. And this is a total new way of consuming and using content that is hosted as XML and hosted in DITA, in our DITA CCMS, because you can really drill down to the individual things like a individual task list with a specific ID, and then go through these steps and project the content into Microsoft HoloLens, for example. Or think of projecting content right from AEM into the head-up display of your BMW or Mercedes or whatever. So there are all these possibilities what you can do with content, and content today is not only consumed by human beings, it's also consumed by systems, by cars, by machines, by other systems that do something with that content, need some information from the content that you produce. This is basically what it looks like in the editor interface, the XML editor in AEM Guides. What you see here is a documentation of a pneumatic, electro-pneumatic gantry robot. And if you look at that sentence highlighted in blue, you see these attributes there with platform, audience, product, and ID. Platform is control system, audience is A1, whatever A1 for an audience might be. The product is the actuator, and the ID of that specific paragraph is 924, and so on. And that looks nice. The author can write into that very easily, just type in the content, tag the content, add the attributes in this nice visual interface here. And under the hood, it's XML. It's pure XML. And you see the command there with the audience, platform, product, and ID attributes. This is what we saw here on the right side nicely. Easy to add these attributes. But under the hood, it's stored as pure XML. So every tool that understands XML and can process and parse XML will be able to do something with that. And it's just up to your imagination of what kind of business solutions you could create with that. And of course, you have content reuse and can easily insert content from one document into another document, and not by just copy and pasting it, you reference it like an image. You know that from maybe FrameMaker or RoboHelp, where you insert an image, and that image can be embedded, but it can also be referenced with a link. So whenever you change that image on the hard drive, it will also change in the documentation. And that is a similar concept. It's called a content reference. And you can reuse the content from one topic in another topic. And that could be the whole topic, but it could also be just one single paragraph or one list item or one table or whatever. So you have a huge freedom to reuse content in a very easy way by just clicking on the ID here, cleaning the robot, click select, and it gets inserted. So that just as a quick idea of how you can enable your content for personalization, manage it here in AEM Guides, write it in AEM Guides, review it in AEM Guides, get it translated through the translation management, and then you have that content ready. And that content can be really everything. It could be a technical documentation like in this example, but it could also be a legal document. It could be your quality management documentation. You can even put marketing content in there. You can put product information in there. You can put pretty much every kind of content in there, and all departments can work together on that platform. And that's the big value of it, I think, because it's fit for every department in the company, because it's so easy to use, and because it's all on one web-based platform where everyone can just log in and start creating content. It's an amazing technology, I think. So some final recommendations when we come to the end. Invest in a unified enterprise-wide content strategy and platform rather than in disjointed technologies and island solutions and many small unconnected silos that becomes very expensive in the end. Build your content management on structured content. Do it with DITA-XML and use a component content management system, a CCMS, to create, manage, deliver omnichannel content and measure the success of it. Best solution for that, the Adobe Experience Platform with Adobe Experience Manager Guides as the CCMS component. Bring all the content contributors onto a common platform, centralize the content, get it governed, get it controlled on one central platform, and modularize your content into small modules that allow for maximum content reuse and applicability across channels. That will save you a lot of money in the end. Make your content fit for Industry 4.0 and IoT applications. Don't always think about just a human being as a content consumer, but also think about machines and systems who want to access that content, maybe through APIs, and want to do fancy new cool things like that. Augmented reality, virtual glasses, or machines that want to pull out information like maintenance information, or other systems from other vendors who want to access that content and do something with it. So there are a lot of possibilities how content can be used today and consumed. So when you create that content, think about that as well. And best is to do it with DITA, because that will enable you to do all these things in the future. More on all that next week at Adobe DITA World, Adobe DITA World 2022, the 7th edition of Adobe DITA World. We have a lot of customers speaking, like BlackBerry, Sienna, Erie Insurance, Hunter Douglas, Thomson Reuters, and Zebra. They all present how they are using the Adobe Experience Platform and Adobe Experience Manager Guides to create content and do cool things with it. And we have a lot of very great partners like Acrolinks, Precision Content, Scriptorium, C-Rex from Germany, Mecon from UK, XTM from UK, Congri also from Germany, and Parson. They will all present very interesting stuff, especially when you're interested in metadata. Have a look at the session from Frank Ralph from Parson. If you're interested in things like how to connect things like Swagger with AM, then have a look at the session on day 2 from C-Rex, from Markus Wiedenmeier. And there are a lot of other great presentations as well. I cannot go through all of them here, but there's a lot of great content coming up next week. DITA-world.com, www.dita-world.com will bring you to that website where you can register for free and then join the conference at any time next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where you are interested. So thanks a lot for your attention. I know it was a lot of stuff, a lot of content, and we're running out of time, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat in the Q&A pod, and I will be happy to go through them in a minute. And of course, you can always write us an email to techcom@adobe.com.